What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the second video of the Let's Talk Fat Loss installment. And I feel badly because in the first video, I was a bit of a jerk. I basically exposed all the reasons that people never get the fat loss that they want, which is kind of uncool if you're not going to provide a helpful solution, but that is exactly what this second video is for. So buckle up and let's get into it. Now, I've made a full video on everything you could ever want to know about how to get lean, and I'll be sure to put that in the description, but I want to go over some of the biggest points from the video. So what's interesting is that fat loss isn't really that complicated. It's actually super simple. You have to get into what is called a caloric deficit, and I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible because once you've been in the space for so long, you start to forget that it's not so easily understandable if you've never interacted with the term. But basically, there is a number of calories that you could be consuming right now to remain exactly as you are. For me, which we'll use it as an example, I'm eating 3,000 calories a day right now, and I'm not gaining any weight. That's called maintenance calories in the fitness space. When your maintenance calories are fixed, you can eat that into eternity essentially and stay the same. It basically means that your metabolism has adapted to that level of caloric intake based on the average energy output that you do on an everyday basis just with your activity. So what I'm saying here is that a caloric deficit is always relative to your maintenance calories. And I feel like that's a really big point that gets left out all the time when people are speaking quickly on Instagram or social media or even on YouTube. So being in a caloric deficit means that you are eating fewer calories than you need to maintain your weight, which makes sense. If you need to lose weight, then we need to be bringing in fewer calories than you need in order to get rid of the stored calories in body fat that you have. For example, if I am on a 3,000 calorie diet and it's my maintenance amount of food, then getting into a caloric deficit would technically be anything less than that. Now, in any meaningful sense, most people will say reduce your calories by 10%, which in this case would be 300 calories. So I would be jumping to 2,700 calories a day. Some people like to operate on more fixed numbers by saying things like, yeah, just reduce your calories by 200 or 500 even. And that's essentially the gist of a caloric deficit without getting into the weeds. So the number one way to get started on your fat loss journey is to get into a caloric deficit. The only time that this does not apply is if you have been dieting for a long time already and your metabolism is super smoked. So if you're that person who's like, well, I've been eating 1,200 calories for the last 6 months and I still have like some chub and I don't like the way I look, this isn't actually going to be good for you. And people who take that blanket advice to just get into a deeper deficit can actually do themselves a lot of harm. So what I'm saying is that this particular advice of getting into a caloric deficit is for people who haven't been dieting. If you're just kind of bigger than you want to be and you've just been eating the planet, time to get into a caloric deficit. Now, the second thing that you've got to do if you want to get your fat loss goals is you probably just got to get your protein in check. There are some other things you could prioritize first. This is my video, so I'm telling you how I would do it. So firstly, caloric deficit. Secondly, you got to distribute those calories that you've committed to in a way that makes sense scientifically. What I mean by that is, if you don't know this, protein is always the first number that people set when it comes to body recomposition goals. And it's because protein preserves the muscle mass that you have and it builds new muscle mass. So it's a good idea to have some around. Specifically, it tends to be a really good idea to eat about 1 gram of protein per pound of your target body weight if you're trying to lose fat. Does that make sense? So if you're like 200 pounds as a man and you want to be 180, then eating about 180 grams of protein a day is a really good idea. If you're a female and you're 130 and you'd like to get down to 115, eating 115 grams of protein per day would be a really good idea. If you're 300 pounds and you have 100 pounds to lose, eating somewhere between probably 180 and 200 grams of protein per day would be a good idea. Beyond that, you can get into the weeds if you want, but I think people would be good to just start with getting their protein intake taken care of after their overall calories are taken care of. But what I like to do is I like to spread out those protein feedings, as we sometimes call it, which sounds kind of weird. And why do we say that? Basically, you should eat protein multiple times per day. There's this physiological mechanism called muscle protein synthesis, which essentially spikes your body's ability to create new muscle tissue about every 4 hours if you provide it with a sufficient amount of protein. So specifically, without getting too hairy and too nasty about all this, that means that I take that gross number of protein per day, which for me is 200 because I'm about 192 pounds in this video, and I divide it by the number of times that I would like to eat per day, which for me is 5. You're going to get 40 grams. So basically what I do is I eat 40 grams of protein 5 times per day. That's probably a lot more than anyone's ever used to eating, but you said you wanted to lose fat. You said you wanted to look leaner. You said you wanted that hard body look. So maybe if you're thinking, I don't want to eat that much protein, maybe you don't want your goal as badly as you think you do. That being said, there is a spectrum of protein, and you don't have to go up to a full gram per pound of body weight. You can do less than that. Anything more than you're doing right now is probably a step in the right direction. But in my opinion, why settle for less when you could just level up your game? I get 40 grams of protein every 3 to 4 hours, 5 times per day. And that has given me by far the best fat loss results, the best muscle building results, period. In short, protein helps your body composition thrive. Beyond that, you could tailor your carbohydrates and your fats, but I'm not going to get into that in this video because I think it's a little too nuanced for what most people need to hear. So after calories, after protein, what I'm going to tell people is to start tracking your steps, or at least create routine in your life that allows you to get more steps. Walking is the most underrated mechanism for fat loss, in my opinion, hands down. Whenever I lost my 31 pounds in 2020, I got on the treadmill maybe like 5 or 6 times, like in the last month or so of my diet. I dieted for 6 months, and all I really did was walk outside, make small choices like parking a little bit farther away in the parking lot, taking a walk around the block with my wife and my dog after work. All these little things added up, and the walking expedited the fat loss. So you've got calories, you've got protein, you've got walking, literally walking. What about number 4? Number 4 to me is not even exercise. We're not even there yet. I'm going to tell you that the number 4 thing you should be paying attention to if you really want to dig into your fat loss goals is sleep. And if you can't get sleep because you are a parent of young ones or there is some other inhibiting factor, do what you can. I'm not saying that it can't happen for you, but the research behind sleep is pretty dope. People who tend to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep have better fat loss outcomes than people who don't. And it probably plays into this idea that stress is just not good for body recomposition change for the positive. Stress is something that the body sort of sees as a warning. It's a threat. It's a threat to the homeostatic mechanisms of everything that you are. And so to be able to tell your body to lose fat while you're in a state of stress never seems to go well. There are literally chemicals and hormones in your body that fight against losing body fat when you're in a state of stress. And that stinks. So people who sleep more, in my experience, tend to be a little bit less stressed. They tend to have a little bit more structure in their life, and they value rest. So number 4 is simply rest, sleep. If you can, get to bed. Don't stay up and watch the extra 2, 3, 4 episodes of Netflix when you could just get precious sleep. I think one of the reasons I was so successful when I lost my 31 pounds is because I prioritize my sleep. Don't get me wrong, I like staying up and watching movies too, guys, but I made a decision to prioritize the results over the fun. And number 5, which I think probably a lot of people were expecting to be number 1, but it's not, get yourself a stinking good workout program. But only if you want to look more muscular. So I think there are 2 genres of fat loss clients. There are people who just want to lose body fat, and they don't really care about looking jacked and lean at the pool or whatever. They just literally want to be a leaner version of themselves, and that's cool. Those people don't really need weight training. Do I think it's amazing and will help you a ton? Of course I do. Building more lean muscle tissue will increase your metabolic rate over time, which means you get to eat more food and stay just the way you are. I've said it before on social media, but one of the biggest reasons that I lift weights is because I know that the more metabolically active tissue I have, aka muscle, the more food I get to eat and look pretty lean. I like eating food, so I'm in. That being said, let's get back to what we were talking about. get yourself a really good workout program. If you don't know what you're doing, do some really good research. If you need to hire a coach, hire a coach. But don't be too proud and think you know how to do it yourself if you don't. So number 5, get a good program if you want to look jacked and lean at the end of it. If you don't worry about it so much. Focus on those first 4. And that is going to wrap up this video, and I'm hoping that despite being short and sweet, it was actually packed full of a lot of information that you could hopefully start applying ASAP. I also highly encourage you to stick around for episode 3 of the series, which is going to be all about Ivory Fitness, which is the body recomposition company that I founded with my great friend Josh Mydell. He and I co-coach for this company, for this brand. We're going to tell you all about it, what exactly we do, and why we might be able to help get you doing the things from this video that have been preventing you from getting the results that you want. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't already, give the video a like. It would be super appreciated. If you want to be a hero, subscribe. If you want to be a superhero, hit the notification bell. It would be awesome. I promise I will be delivering more and more content on the regular. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.